Welcome to the Paul Adefarasin. We revisit the word, surface the big ideas, and give you space to reflect, pray, and act. If you'd like the full message, though, you can watch it on YouTube or listen on Spotify after this episode.
You know, when we think about the obstacles standing in our way, we usually picture something physical, like a locked door or maybe a totally depleted bank account.
Right, or just not having the right connections or the right skill set.
Exactly. And it's comforting in a weird way, because you can just point at it and say, that right there, that's the thing stopping me.
Yeah, it gives you a very specific target. Because if the problem is external and measurable, then solving it is usually just about finding the right tool to break it down.
But what if that locked door isn't actually the problem?
What do you mean?
Like, what if the greatest obstacle to your future isn't a lack of resources at all, but a story? Specifically, the story you've just, accepted about yourself.
It's the internal narrative.
Yeah, about your future and what's actually possible for someone like you. So today we're doing a deep dive into a really powerful argument from Pastor Paul Adefarasin.
Right, from that live stream sermon.
Yep, delivered in Lagos, Nigeria, back on Sunday, June 14th, 2026.
It's such a fascinating source to dig into.
It really is. And the mission of this deep dive is to extract the core message of his sermon, because he makes this case that whether you're trying to, overhaul your personal life or lead a boardroom or even transform a whole nation.
The most potent tool you have is literally right under your nose.
Exactly. He's talking about the human mouth.
Yeah, and what's interesting is he approaches this not just as like a theological concept, but almost as a master class in communication and applied psychology.
Right.
He argues that your mouth is literally an instrument of creation. But to really grasp how we can use our words to alter reality, we have to look at the baseline he establishes.
Yeah, he goes straight to Psalm 3.6 for that foundation.
The New Living Translation, right?
Yes, which says, "The Lord merely spoke, and the heavens were created." And what stood out to me wasn't just him quoting the scripture, but the framing.
Oh, calling God the ultimate master of science.
Exactly. He doesn't just describe God as this distant spiritual entity. He points to the intricate biology of the human body, the complexities of the cardiovascular system.
The way our organs just autonomously regulate themselves.
Yeah. And he emphasizes that the creative medium for all of this incredible engineering was just spoken word. God used his mouth to speak reality into existence.
Which sets up his core concept beautifully. Because if humans are created in that image, the implication is that our own mouths aren't just for, eating or casual conversation.
Right. They have a functional design.
Exactly. The pastor describes the human mouth as the overflow valve of the human heart. It's a mechanism inherently designed to shape reality and destiny.
But that's a massive responsibility, because if your mouth is an overflow valve, it means whatever is dominating your internal landscape.
Your fears, your anxiety.
Yeah, your convictions, all of that is going to leak out and actively shape your external environment.
It really is.
Okay, but I have to push back here for a second, because when you hear phrases like speak your reality into existence, it edges dangerously close to toxic positivity.
Sure.
Or worse, that superficial name it and claim it philosophy, where someone thinks they can just shout at a luxury car until it magically appears in their driveway.
Right, just demanding things from the universe.
Exactly. So how do we know if a desire we're speaking is actually meaningful or if it's just our ego talking?
That's a really vital critique. And the pastor actually tackles that tension head on. He's totally clear that this isn't about ignoring the real hardships of life or blindly chasing money out of greed.
Okay, so how does he resolve it?
He points to Matthew 6.33. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. He explains that the power of the spoken word only works when your desires are aligned with the divine purpose.
So it's not just a magic spell to get whatever random thing you want on a Tuesday?
Far from it. The mechanics he outlines are basically the exact reverse of the name it and claim it idea.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He argues that God doesn't just grant you a random desire so your faith can produce a prize. Instead, God prepares a path first. The purpose, or what he calls the wealthy destiny, is bet ahead of time.
Okay, I'm with you.
And only after that path is laid does God plant the desire for it in your heart.
Wow. So the desire is essentially a notification.
Exactly.
It's an internal ping telling you that something has already been prepared ahead of you. And your job is to speak into existence what has already been divinely staged.
That is the exact mechanism. You aren't creating a selfish reality from scratch. You're using your words to align yourself with a pre-existing destiny.
But wait, that creates a massive logical problem.
How so?
Well, if God prepares the path and gives you the desire and gives you the words to speak it, why do people still hit such catastrophic walls?
Yeah.
Like, if I'm speaking my aligned destiny, why am I suddenly getting laid off or dealing with a health crisis or stuck in a terrible situation?
I mean, that gap between what we speak and what we actually experience is basically the core tension of the human experience, isn't it?
Completely.
And to address this, the pastor leans really heavily into the biblical story of Joseph. It's his ultimate case study for navigating that brutal distance between a spoken promise and a lived reality.
And the distance in Joseph's case is wild. I mean, he's a teenager. He gets this incredible dream about his future greatness.
The desire is planted.
Right. His heart overflows. He speaks the dream out loud to his brothers, and his immediate reward for using his mouth is being violently thrown into a literal pit.
Yeah, and the pit is just chapter 1 of the disaster. From there, he's sold into human trafficking, forced into slavery in a foreign country.
It just keeps getting worse.
It does. Then, after being entirely falsely accused of a crime he didn't commit, he's thrown into a dungeon.
You know, if we look at Joseph's journey through the lens of modern career development, it almost looks less like a series of divine punishments and more like an absolutely grueling startup incubator.
Oh, I love that. The
Yeah.
startup incubator. Walk me through how you see that playing out.
Well, think about the skill set required for his ultimate destiny. Joseph's divine purpose was to become the vizier of Egypt, right? Basically the prime minister managing a global famine.
Right, massive responsibility.
But when he first spoke his dream, he was just a spoiled teenager with zero practical skills. So he gets sold to Potiphar's house. It's a horrific situation, obviously, but while he's a slave, he's forced to learn Egyptian culture, language, and the management science of running a massive, wealthy estate.
Wow. So he's getting a crash course in operations and logistics.
Exactly. Then he gets thrown into prison, which seems like a massive step backward, but who is locked up with him? Pharaoh's chief butler and baker.
Oh, he is literally networking in a dungeon.
Yes, he is making the exact high-level political connections he needs to eventually become the executive coach to the most powerful ruler on the planet.
See, this is the underlying architecture of the pastor's message. He anchors this concept at 1 Corinthians 2:7-10, which discusses the hidden wisdom of God.
Okay.
He explains that adversarial forces, the princes of this world, they operate on surface-level logic. If they had actually understood what God was engineering, they never would have put Joseph in the pit.
Because the pit wasn't a burial ground, it was the launching pad.
Exactly. They thought they were burying his dream, but they were actually planting it. And the practical takeaway for you, the listener, is this massive paradigm shift. Do not despise your terrible place.
Whether that's a dead-end job or a frustrating financial season.
Right. Or a period of profound personal struggle. That terrible place is actively building your resume. It's forging your emotional resilience and placing you in proximity to the exact people or lessons you're going to need next.
And looking at how Pastor Adefarasin frames this, it's fascinating because he scales the pit concept up from individual psychology to macroeconomics.
Yes, he does.
He points directly at the nation of Nigeria and the broader African continent and applies this exact same template.
And he's very frank about the structural realities there. He impartially compares the nation's current systemic and economic limitations directly to the chains Joseph wore in slavery.
Yeah, he doesn't sugarcoat the severity of the current pit at all.
No, not at all.
He acknowledges the incredibly difficult structural issues the country is wading through, but he completely rejects the narrative that these struggles define the end of the story.
Right.
He outlines a vision that just as Joseph leveraged his time in the dungeon to rise to the palace, Nigeria is currently in its own incubator phase.
Yeah, he prophesies a future where the nation leverages its immense population to become a global powerhouse.
Fueled by 400 million educated people, he envisions a society completely unrecognizable to the global powers that might have previously marginalized it.
And what bridges the gap between the current limitation, whether it's for a nation of hundreds of millions or just for one person listening to this deep dive right now, what bridges that gap to eventual greatness?
It loops right back to the central thesis, communication.
Exactly. How we articulate our current reality dictates our future one.
Okay, so if Joseph survived the pit because his words and his internal narrative kept him aligned with his destiny, the obvious question is, how do we actually do that?
Yeah, practically speaking.
Right, because we all know people who talk a big game, you know. They constantly proclaim how successful they're going to be, but their lives never change. They just stay stuck
Well, the pastor makes a really brilliant distinction here about the intent behind our words. He argues that when you communicate, your goal should never be to be impressive. Your goal must be to be impactful.
Okay, they sound like synonyms, though. What's the mechanical difference between being impressive and being impactful?
It entirely comes down to the audience's internal reaction. If you deliver a presentation or give advice and you're merely impressive, the listener walks away thinking, wow, that person is incredibly smart. They are awesome.
Which feels great for your ego,
Oh, sure.
but it doesn't actually move the needle for anyone else.
Exactly. It just advertises your own capability. But if you are impactful, the listener walks away from the interaction thinking, wow, I'm awesome. I have potential. I can overcome my obstacles.
Ah, I see.
Impactful communication transfers power to the listener and catalyzes transformation. Impressive communication just builds a pedestal for the speaker.
I understand the theory, but how do you actually execute that in the real world? Like, how do you capture an audience's attention and spark that kind of impact without crossing the line into just showing off your own expertise?
The rule the pastor provides for this is incredibly disarming. He says, to be interesting, you must first be interested.
Meaning you have to lead with curiosity rather than authority.
Yes. If you walk into a boardroom or even a tense family gathering and immediately start broadcasting your own brilliance, people's psychological defenses just go up.
They tune you right out.
They do.
Yeah.
But if you lead by asking genuine questions, if you actively investigate what the people around you are struggling with, what their specific context is, and what they actually need, you unlock a door.
Right. By showing you are genuinely interested in them, you earn their trust.
Exactly. And only then do they become vulnerable enough to receive whatever transformational message you have to share.
You have to earn the right to speak into someone's reality by proving you care about their reality first.
Perfectly said.
And once you've earned that right, the pastor shares a deeply memorable analogy from his own childhood about how to actually deliver the message.
Oh, this is my favorite part, the Nivaquine.
Yes. He talks about his mother giving him Nivaquine. For anyone unfamiliar, it's a medication historically used to treat malaria.
It is remarkably effective, but it is notorious for being overwhelmingly aggressively bitter.
Yeah, he talks about how much he dreaded that bitter taste as a kid. So to get him to take it, his mother would give him a glass of Ribena, which is this very sweet, syrupy blackcurrant juice, to wash it down.
The Nivaquine was the cure, but the Ribena was the delivery system.
It's a masterful metaphor for human communication.
It really is. The pastor explains that the principles you need to communicate, the hard truths, the complex data, the behavioral corrections, those are the Nivaquine.
Right.
They are essential for survival and growth, but human beings naturally resist them. Raw facts are bitter and hard to swallow.
Because our brains just don't naturally want to digest raw data or receive tough love. We put up walls.
Which is exactly why you need the Ribena. The Ribena represents stories, metaphors, pictures, and relatable proofs.
Ah, I love that.
If you want to change someone's mind, you can't just hand them a bulleted list of bitter truths. You have to wrap your principles in a compelling narrative.
Because years later, the listener might not be able to recite the raw data point, but they will absolutely remember the story.
Yes, and the story acts as a Trojan horse, carrying the principle right past their defenses and into their memory.
That applies universally, whether you're a manager trying to implement a new workflow, a parent trying to impart wisdom to a teenager, or just a friend offering advice.
Absolutely.
If you just give them the unvarnished facts, you're force-feeding them dry Nivaquine. You have to pour the Ribena.
It's highly effective for interpersonal communication. But the pastor takes this concept to a micro level that is arguably the most challenging aspect of the entire sermon.
Oh, the internal dialogue.
Right. It's one thing to use the Ribena strategy on a crowd or a client or a child. It's an entirely different battle to use it on yourself.
Because the hardest person in the world to convince of anything is the person staring back at you in the mirror.
Without question.
Yeah.
And to explore this, he references Mark 11.23, where Jesus talks about speaking to mountains and commanding them to move.
Okay.
He pairs that with Proverbs 18.21, which states that death and life are in the power of the tongue. The implication is that before you can speak to the external mountains in your life, you have to conquer the internal ones.
He uses King David as the prime example of this, right?
He does.
Like, before David could step onto a battlefield and physically confront Goliath, he had to manage his own psychology. He literally had to speak to his own soul.
Yeah.
He would say, "Why are you downcast, O my soul? Put your hope in God." He had to preach an impactful sermon to his own internal audience before he could take action.
And the mechanics of this are unavoidable. If your internal narrative is dominated by fear, past trauma, and a sense of limitation, your external words will never carry the conviction required to shape your reality. The mouth is the overflow valve. If the reservoir of your heart is filled with doubt, your mouth can only output doubt, and you'll just stay stuck in the pit.
So the multi-million-dollar question is, how do we actually clean out the reservoir?
Yeah, the practical steps.
Right. How do we fix the internal narrative so that the overflow is actually productive? This brings us to what the pastor calls the weekday work.
I love this part. He shifts from theology to highly practical, everyday habits. He lays out 4 specific areas of focus for the listener to implement immediately.
Let's break those down. What's the first one?
The first area deals directly with the brain's natural tendency to fixate on the negative. He tells the congregation they have to stop hitting repeat.
Stop hitting repeat. Because human psychology is wired with a negativity bias, right?
Sure.
We vividly remember our failures, the times we were humiliated, the rejections.
Exactly. And the pastor frames this by saying you have to realize you are the movie writer, the director, and the projectionist of your own mind. You are the one choosing to screen the tragedy over and over. He challenges the listener to actively erase those old narratives and intentionally start playing a new movie, one based on divine promise and future potential.
But that requires immense cognitive discipline.
Well, it really does.
When that old memory of failure tries to play, you have to consciously intervene and change the reel. Because if you keep watching the replay of your worst moments, you'll unconsciously align your speech and your actions with that past failure rather than your future destiny.
That's so true. And that leads to the second area of the weekday work, which addresses how we actually fuel that new movie.
Building a digital library.
Yes. He urges everyone to curate a collection of audiobooks, podcasts, sermons, and principles right on their smartphones.
This is all about the mechanics of input versus output. He makes the point that you cannot speak eloquently if you do not read eloquently.
Exactly.
If you want to have stories, the Ribena, ready to deploy in a crucial conversation, you have to be constantly consuming high-quality narratives.
It's the classic garbage in, garbage out principle. If your primary input is doom-scrolling, anxiety-inducing social media feeds for 4 hours a day, that's what your reservoir is filled with.
And that's what will overflow when you open your mouth. You have to actively curate your intake. Okay, what's the third area?
The third habit is cultivating a reliance on daily guidance. He advises against just stumbling blindly into your daily interactions.
Okay.
He suggests taking time every single day to actively ask God for the wisdom to perfect the use of your mouth.
So it's really about building hyper-awareness around your communication, asking for the discernment to know when to speak up, when to stay silent, what specific words to use.
And how to frame them so they create impact rather than just noise.
Right. And that individual awareness leads perfectly into his fourth and final point, the necessity of corporate proclamation.
Yes. He strongly emphasizes the psychological and spiritual power of gathering together in a community.
Because we spend so much time in our own heads, fighting our own individual doubts.
Yes, really do.
But there is a compounding effect that happens when a group of people gather and collectively speak their goals, their faith, and their promises out loud.
The collective conviction of a community is incredibly effective at drowning out individual hesitation. When you hear the people around you boldly articulating their destiny, it gives you the courage to articulate your own.
Looking at the entirety of this deep dive, from the biblical foundations to the practical habits, the core message Pastor Adefarasin delivers is just profound. Your mouth isn't just a biological tool, it's an instrument of creation.
Whether you find yourself currently navigating the dark, frustrating pit of a personal crisis, or you're preparing to step into a new level of leadership, the words you choose to use will serve as the architectural blueprint for your future.
And building that future requires strategy. It requires the discipline to stop replaying your past failures.
Right.
It requires the emotional intelligence to be genuinely interested in others so you can earn the right to impact them. And it requires the skill to wrap your bitter principles in the sweet Ribena of storytelling.
Ultimately, the internal movie you accept about yourself is the only obstacle that truly matters.
So as you head into a daunting meeting tomorrow, or just look in the mirror trying to survive a tough season, consider this final thought.
Alrighty.
If our internal narrative truly dictates our external reality, and the words we use are the building blocks of that reality, What if the very vocabulary you possess is currently limiting the size of the mountains you're capable of moving?
Wow.
If you learn 10 new, expensive, powerful words to describe your potential today, how much larger could your destiny become tomorrow? Keep diving deep.
Thank you for listening. To go deeper, watch the full message on YouTube or listen to the full-length sermon on Spotify. Follow the podcast, and please share it with someone who needs it and leave your response in the Q&A. Kindly keep your heart on fire, your eyes on Jesus, knowing you are the exception. Grace and peace. We love you deeply.